Article 12, option clauses. Section 1 is team options. Section 2 is player options. Now, both team options and player options have the same rules when it comes to except provided in Article 8, Section 1. A player contract cannot contain an option in favor of the team or the player except an option that is specifically negotiated between a vet or rookie other than a first-round pick and authorizes the extension of the contract for no more than 1 year beyond the stated term, is exercisable only once, and provides that the salary, likely bonuses, and unlikely bonuses, excluding incentive comp, that's payable in respect to the option year is no less than 100% of the salary with respect to the last year of the stated term, and all other terms and conditions other than the payment schedule for the player's base comp in the option year will be unchanged from those that apply to the last year of the stated term. Now, in addition to for the player options, if a player contract contains an option in favor of the player and provides for base comp protection in the option year, then the contract must also contain an in Exhibit 2 under the heading, quote, additional conditions or limitations, either the language set forth in subsection A or subsection B, but not both. And the language will define the respective rights and obligations of the player and the team. Now, option A basically says if the contract is terminated by the team prior to the player's exercise of the option, then the player will still be entitled to that base compensation protection. And option B says that if the contract is terminated by the team prior to the player's exercise of the option, then they have no obligation to pay the player base compensation with respect to the option year. No player contract that contains subsection B may provide for the option in favor of the player to be exercisable earlier than the day following the date of the team's last game prior to the option year, and or an early termination option or ETO, provided that the ETO is exercisable only once and takes effect no earlier than the end of the fourth season of the contract. A contract that does not provide an ETO when signed may not be amended to provide for an ETO during the original term of the contract. If a team and a player enters into an extension other than a rookie scale extension, the contract may not be amended to provide for an ETO, and any previously existing ETO will be eliminated. An extension of a rookie scale contract may simultaneously be amended to provide for an ETO, provided that ETO is exercisable only once and can take effect no earlier than the end of the fourth season of the extended term of the contract. Section 3, no conditional options. The right of the team or player to exercise an option or ETO must be fixed at the time the contract or extension is entered into and may not be contingent upon the satisfaction of any individually negotiated condition. In the case of an ETO, the effective season must be fixed as well. Section 4, exercise period. Any ETO must be exercised prior to the June 30th, immediately prior to the effective season of that ETO. Any option must be exercised prior to the June 30, immediately prior to the season covered by the option, except that an option in favor of a player who would become a restricted free agent if the option were not exercised must be exercised prior to the June 25, immediately prior to the season covered by that option. Section 5, option exercise notices. The NBA needs to provide the Players Association with copies of any option or ETO exercise or non-exercise notice received by the NBA within 2 business days of their receipt of such notice. Article 13, Circumvention. Section 1, General Prohibitions. It is the intention of the parties that any provision agreed within the agreement relating to the salary cap, exceptions to the cap, the scope of basketball-related income, escrow and tax arrangement, rookie scale, right of first refusal, max player salary, and free agency is interpreted to preserve the essential benefits achieved by both parties to this agreement. No party involved is allowed to enter into any kind of transaction that is designed to serve the purpose of defeating or circumventing the intention of the parties reflected in the agreement or any of the provisions in the agreement. It shall constitute a violation of Section 1 for a team to enter into any agreement or understanding with any sponsor or business partner or third party that pays or agrees to pay compensation for basketball services to a player under contract to the team. Now, such agreement may be inferred where the compensation is substantially in excess of the fair market value of the services to be rendered by the player, and the compensation in the player contract is substantially below the fair market value of the contract. It is also a violation of Section 1A for a team to have a financial arrangement or offer a financial arrangement or inducement to a player that is not signed to a current player contract, except as permitted by this collective bargaining agreement. This is not including retired players. Nothing that was just said will interfere with a team's obligation to pay a player deferred compensation earned under his prior contract. Section 2. No unauthorized agreements. At no time shall there be any agreements or transactions of any kind between a player and a team that is concerning any future renegotiation, extension, or other amendment of an existing contract or entry into a new contract, or except as permitted by the agreement that's set forth in a uniform player contract, provided that the team hasn't intentionally delayed submitting that uniform player contract for approval by the NBA, involving compensation or consideration to be paid to or for the benefit of the player, or except as permitted by this agreement, involving an investment or business opportunity made available for the benefit of the player. A player will not be found to have committed a violation of Section 2A(ii) if the violation is the team's intentional delay in submitting the uniform player contract without the player's knowledge. Section 3. Penalties. Upon finding a violation of Section 1, the commissioner will be authorized to impose a fine up to $3 million, 50% going to the NBA, 50% going to the NBPA selected charitable organization for the first offense, $4.5 million the second time, direct the forfeiture of one first-round pick, void any player contract when both the player and the team committed the violation, and or void any other transaction or agreement found to have violated Section 1. Upon violation of Section 2, there can be a fine of up to $6 million on any team, direct the forfeiture of first-round picks when both the player and the team committed the violation, void a player contract, and impose a fine of up to $250,000 on any player, and or prohibit any future player contract between the player and the team. Any team personnel found to have engaged in the violation can be suspended for up to 1 year, or void any transaction or agreement found to have violated, and direct the disgorgement by the player of any of the value received, unless the player has evidence that he was unaware of the violation. In no event shall the penalty imposed upon a player agent found to have violated Section 2 be less than a 1-year suspension of the player agent certification by the Players Association. The commissioner is also authorized to impose a fine of up to $250,000 on any team found by the commissioner to have violated Section 2. In the event that the commissioner imposes that fine, the Players Association has the right to de novo review of the commissioner's findings that a Section 2 violation occurred. Section 4. Production of tax materials. In any proceeding to enforce Section 1 or 2, a system arbitrator will have the authority to direct any team affiliate, or player to provide any tax returns or other relevant tax materials disclosing income figures for the player. Non-income figures may be redacted, or disclosing expense figures by the team. Section 5. Transactions with retired players. If a team enters into a transaction after the date of this agreement with a retired player who has played for the team within the 5-year period preceding the transaction, and the terms provide for compensation in excess of $10,000 or to be provided with an investment or business opportunity, and if the compensation the retired player received when he was a player was substantially below the fair market value under the cap system, then the NBA may challenge the transaction on the grounds that the compensation or consideration substantially exceeds the fair market value of the services by the retired player, or that the amount of the retired player's investment is not commercially reasonable given the relative risk and rewards of that investment. Any challenge under Section 5 will be filed in writing with the business valuation expert jointly selected by the NBA and Players Association. Now, a selection of a grievance arbitrator will happen in the absence of an agreement between the parties. The NBA will have the burden of proof. If the NBA prevails in its challenge under Section 5, the difference between the compensation or consideration received by the retired player and a reasonable estimate of the fair market value of the services provided by the retired player will be included in the team's salary, subject to the team's room and other salary cap rules. In the event that any amount required to be included in the team's salary exceeds the team's room, the challenge transaction or arrangement will be rescinded and of no further force or effect. If the NBA prevails in its challenge via Section 5 and the retired player and the team renegotiate or terminate the transaction, any revised terms will be promptly disclosed and may be resubjected to the procedures of Section 5B. Article 14, Anti-Collusion Provisions. Now, this is a lot of very common sense knowledge, but I'll go ahead and do Section 1 of Article 14, which is no collusion. Subject to Section 2, no NBA team, its employees or agents can enter into any contracts, combinations, or conspiracies expressed or implied with the NBA or any other NBA team, their employees or agents, to negotiate or not negotiate a vet or rookie, to submit or not submit an offer sheet to a restricted free agent, to offer or not offer a player contract to any free agent, to exercise or not exercise the right of first refusal, or concerning the terms or condition of employment offered to any vet or rookie. Section 3, Individual Negotiations. No NBA team shall fail or refuse to negotiate with or enter into a player contract with any player who is free to negotiate and sign a player contract with any NBA team on any of the following grounds. That a player has previously been subject to the exclusive rights obtained by another NBA team in an NBA draft, or the player has previously refused a player contract containing an option, or the player has become a restricted free agent or an unrestricted free agent, or has been subject to a right of first refusal. Section 4, League Disclosures. The NBA League Office cannot knowingly communicate or disclose to any NBA team that another NBA team has negotiated with any restricted free agent until the offer sheet should have been given to the right of first refusal team or any free agent prior to the execution of that player contract. If a system arbitrator determines that a player has suffered economic injury due to a violation of Section 1, then the player will have the right to terminate his existing player contract at his option. However, the termination can't take effect until the conclusion of the then-going NBA season, and it must be exercised by the player within 30 days. If the player would have been an unrestricted free agent, he'll immediately become one. If he would have been a restricted free agent, then he'll immediately become one. And if a player chooses to reinstate his contract at any time, he'll have until September 15th of that year. To recover damages, he'll have the right to recover damages described in Section 9. However, if the player terminates the contract and doesn't reinstate, he may not recover damages for the period after the termination takes effect. And if a player doesn't terminate his contract or reinstates it, he may recover damages for the entire period of the injury. Section 9, Calculation of Damages. Upon finding a violation of Section 1 that caused economic injury, compensatory damages, i.e. the amount by which any player has been injured as a result of the violation, and non-compensatory damages, i.e. the amount exceeding compensatory damages, will be awarded as follows. 2 times the amount of compensatory damages for the first violation, 3 times the amount of compensatory damages for the second violation, and in addition to that, it can also be a $4 million fine for the third time. Section 10, payment of damages. The amount of compensatory damages shall be paid to the injured player. The amount of non-compensatory damages, including any fines, will be paid to the Players Association. Section 11, effect of damages on the salary cap. Non-compensatory damages, including fines, will not be included in any of the computations. The compensatory damages will be included. Section 15, termination of agreement. The Players Association has the right to terminate this agreement under the following circumstances: the findings of one or more instances of a violation of Section 1 involved 5 or more teams and cause injury to 5 or more players, or with respect to any 2 consecutive NBA seasons, the findings of one or more instances that involve 7 or more teams and 7 or more players. Also, 10 or more teams that have engaged in a violation causing economic injury to 1 or more NBA players. And in order to terminate the agreement, the proceedings must be brought by the Players Association, and the NBA and system arbitrator must be informed. Section 17, the limits. Any action under Section 1 above must be brought within 90 days of the time when the player knows or reasonably should have known that he had a claim, or within 90 days of the start of the NBA season in which the violation of Section 1 is claimed, whichever is later. That concludes Articles 12 through 14, pages 304 to 323, covering option clauses, circumvention, and anti-collusion provisions. Happy studying. See you at the top.